There we go. We just started the screen recording, which is cool. And I've just started that. Okay. Hello, people. I'll just do a quick update because these videos are about my accountability. I did go for a run yesterday. I did apply for jobs yesterday. Did a bunch of stuff yesterday. And I have to say, today's not been as good. Like, I've had a little bit of a wobble in terms of my sleep pattern. You know, like, I went to bed and started scrolling. And then I started hearing the birds tweeting at 3:57 a.m, which is round about when it starts to get light at the moment. It's crazy. Anyway, so tomorrow's a new day. I've got something planned for tomorrow in regards to jobs, and I will do a run tomorrow, which was, you know, right, which is on routine anyway. And I've done a few things today, so I don't feel too terrible. Anyway, let's get into this video. So I thought I'd do something different, and hopefully this will show up for you, which is sort of like what I've been doing is just going back to my old videos and going through them in order, and they're kind of in order. I don't know, they seem to reappear in different ways. Anyway, there's a video here called Fighting Games for Beginners, where I was experimenting with, like, what do I know about Street Fighter 5 and the mechanics and all that stuff. I wasn't ever pretending to be an expert, but I was trying to give some advice on how to go about progressing and learning, and using matches to learn, and sometimes failing or losing matches with a desire to learn how to do a combo or something like that. It sort of popped off a little bit, certainly for me, and people still use it to this day. And really it caught the attention of a lot of different types of players and content creators and so on. And that was when I first met Vesper, actually, who was I'll talk about Vesper at some other point in terms of somebody who supported me along the way. But I think he sent me a message saying that he really liked the video. Anyway, the first interview that I could call in my batch of favorites, because there's never going to be one, I don't think, but maybe we'll find out. I don't know. But the first interview that was like a big deal and really popped off was from the first Street Fighter 5 major, which was final round 19. I forget the exact date. It doesn't say it on here. It just says 9 years ago. And I think Infiltration won it, probably with Nash. Honestly, and I think Takedo was using Ryu, if I remember correctly, and Sonic Fox was there as well. He may have come, I think it was either first, second, third, or three people from the top 8. I'm not 100% sure, but Sonic Fox was using Fang, and Sonic Fox was great in this interview, actually. The whole thing was weird because, that's the wrong word, but the whole thing was fortuitous, but it was also kind of scary for me. I was just thrown into the mix. So what had been happening over that weekend was I was talking to this guy who, I think he lives in Japan, but he also is part of the final round crowd, in terms of the people who organise that tournament and stuff. And now, off the top of my head, I can't remember his name, but he was a really good dude, and I was really just trying to get to Takedo, and I wanted to see if I could do an interview with Takedo. I knew Takedo spoke English, and this was before I did multiple interviews with Takedo, obviously. And this guy was saying, yeah, don't worry, I'll get him for you and we'll make it happen. And it was just such a busy, crazy tournament. Way more people turned up than expected. It was Street Fighter 5 hype. It was good though. You know, I got the opportunity to interview Javits and Gustavo Strider and L.I. Joe and Shen, which was great. All of that was great. Obviously, my interviews were still quite short in those days. But right at the end of the tournament, when I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to get taquido, things aren't going to work out as I had hoped, I've paid all this money to come down here and do this, and I really had taquido in my crosshairs, but I wasn't yet at that stage where people knew who I was. And I think at some point later on along the line, taquido and I started to correspond more directly, or followed each other or whatever. At this point, I just couldn't get to the people I wanted to get to a lot of the time, as much as I tried. But then at the end, it turned out this guy who lived in Japan, did his own little interview in this random room. Everyone else had gone home, and there was these three guys that he just grabbed from the stage, which just happened to be Infiltration, Taquido, and Sonic Fox. What an amazing group of people to have in the same room. And I didn't have any preparation to interview three people at the same time. I don't think I even have a microphone. I was actually very worried during this that I wasn't going to be able to pick up any sound. And in fact, I set up my sound all wrong. It was literally a minute where they just threw me in there and were like, go. And so I put my camera on, I pressed record, and the sound is not great on that interview at all, because it's literally using, I think, even though I thought the recorder was working, but it wasn't, it was literally used just the sound of the camera, the DSLR camera, and you're not really supposed to do that because DSLR cameras aren't designed that way. But the beauty of the interview, if I remember correctly, was that Sonic Fox always had something to say, and it was always good, and it was good value, and then of course the other two were sort of, not struggling with their English, but they were English speakers, but varying from sort of basic to reasonably fluent to quite fluent. I can't remember at the time, but I think Infiltration was reasonably fluent, and Taquido too. But both those players, I feel over time when I interviewed them, got better and better at speaking English. But then I think sometimes I did interviews with them where I would use interpreters anyway, if the interpreter was really good, because they would get frustrated with themselves in terms of wanting to get a point across, and they couldn't always do it on their own, so they needed someone else there. So this interview worked out quite well because I was able to sort of lean on Sonic Fox to sort of really bring some energy and some fluidity to the interview, and then I could ask the same question. I was just improvising. I was totally improvising, if I remember correctly. And I was trying to get everybody in it, Taquido, what do you think? Infiltration, what do you think? And interestingly, Infiltration, I hadn't done many interviews at this point. And Infiltration had said to me, I know who you are. I watch your interviews. I think they're great, which calmed me down, which was nice. And Taquido probably had no idea who I was at all at the time, but it was an opportunity to be there face to face with. I'm not going to lie, Taquido's always been my favourite player, from the Akuma days in Street Fighter 4, basically. And whenever I see him playing a character who isn't Akuma, I just get really kind of sad. In the same way that I get quite sad when I've always loved, there's a lot, I don't know, it really depends when you really got fixated on the FGC and what game you were playing. And Street Fighter 4 for me was, I had in my head Ryu, and Daigo is Ryu, and Daigo represents the values of Ryu, and then Taquido kind of represents the values of Akuma, because before that he was seen as this, whatever character he's using, that's the cheapest character in the game. He's here to win, that's it. But he was, he did some amazing things with Akuma and all that stuff. And then the conversation with Sonic Fox was fascinating, talking about the style of player he was and what type of characters, setup characters, I think he called them. I forget exactly, but like setup characters that he uses, and Fang sort of suited his style and all that sort of stuff. And it's rare to get Sonic Fox, you know, in a major Street Fighter tournament. And so this interview was just like, I knew if I could get the sound fixed, which I had to do some stuff in post with, if I got the sound fixed, I thought, yeah, maybe this will be all right, maybe this will work. And it did, and it blew up, and that was sort of really the start of in some ways that was sort of like the real start of like some of the interviews, the more memorable interviews. And for me, it's an unforgettable experience. I was given 10 minutes. I stretched it out to 20 somehow, as I always do. They were very accommodating and seemed to want to be there and say what they had to say. And it was a fun, the whole thing was fun. And for me, it was like flying on the edge just flying on the edge of the seat of my pants. Oh my God. Anyway, you can tell I haven't had enough sleep. Yeah, good times. Loved that interview. Loved it. And I wish I'd actually done more interviews with Sonic Fox. Would have loved to have done an interview with him for Dragon Ball FighterZ, but we'll talk about that era when we get to it. But yeah, I'm just sort of going through, that's what I'm doing, is I'm going through this stuff, and, you know, from my oldest videos to my newest videos, and just sort of, oh look, this is when I leaked Balrog. I leaked some on-screen footage of Balrog. That's a funny story, and we'll get to it. Anyway, guys, listen, if you've ever enjoyed any of my content, do me a favor, and you know, you can like, comment, subscribe, but if you want to donate, there's a donation link down below, Ko-Fi donation. I'm halfway towards getting my partnership back. It's going to take a bit longer, but we'll see. My promise at the moment is to be consistent and to turn up every day and do this, and I'm just pushing through it in a way, because it's very different for me. It's hard for me to not want to make a more sort of once a week super hyper edited video, as opposed to just turning up every day and keeping this consistency, which is more important for me personally in my development right now. And anyway, that's that. So until tomorrow, peace out.